All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining us for our 23rd Annual Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Conference. I'd first like to thank all of our sponsors today, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, PA Environment Digest, Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds, the Appalachian Region Independent Power Producers Association, also known as ARIPA, Pennsylvania Aggregates and Concrete Association, and Pagnati Enterprises. We ask that participants ask any questions through the Whova app and chat box to the right of the video. Please don't ask through the Zoom app. The session will conclude in about 40 minutes. And for Senator Yaw, I'm going to turn off my camera throughout your presentation. And then when I turn that back on, that's when we could start the Q&A session if that works for you. Okay. So again, thank you all for joining us. And with that, I'd like to introduce the following presentation. Senator Yaw, he represents the 23rd District, which includes Bradford, Lycoming, Sullivan, Susquehanna, and Union counties. He was first elected in 2008 and currently serves as chairman of the Senate Environmental Resources and Energy Committee. He is also vice chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a member of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs, Banking and Insurance, Majority Policy, Rules and Executive Nominations, and Urban Affairs and Housing Committees. He is also a member of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, as well as the Environmental Quality Board, among others. A U.S. Army veteran, Yaw enlisted and went on to graduate from United States Artillery and Missile Officer Candidate School in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He graduated from Montoursville High School, attended Bucknell University, and earned degrees from Lycoming College and the American University School of Law in Washington, D.C. He currently resides in Loyalsock Township and is married and has 2 children and 2 grandchildren. He's here today to discuss Senate Bill 832 that establishes a Clean Streams Fund. So we're honored to have you here, Senator, and welcome to the 23rd Annual AMR Conference. So whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good morning, and thank you. After hearing all that list of things, I think, gee, when I have time to do other things out there, I guess. Let me talk a little bit about 832 and the genesis behind it, and how we got where we are. Pennsylvania has a lot. We have about 85,000 miles of rivers and streams. And everything that we hear and talk about is that probably about 1/3 of them have some level of impairment. And if for all of you who recall about, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that, there were some rules came out about total maximum daily load, TMDL. And we focused, or the focus at that point was on point source discharges, and that is municipal sewage treatment plants. And unfortunately, or fortunately, what the money that we spent on those plants, we spent literally, probably in my district, a couple of $2 billion in upgrading those plants. And what we were doing, point source discharge means here's the pipe. You can see it. Here's where the discharge. And those point source discharges, as I said, cost about somewhere in the billions, couple of $1 billion to upgrade them throughout my district. And we were really addressing maybe 20%, that's probably being generous, 20% of the problem of water pollution in Pennsylvania. We're down to the point now, and some of this is generated by EPA and the requirements that EPA has placed on Pennsylvania for the Chesapeake Bay. And I'll just mention that 832 is much broader than just the Chesapeake Bay, but I can tell you about the incentive behind it. The Susquehanna watershed supplies about 50% of the fresh water that goes into the bay. And that 50% of the water that goes into the bay comes from the drainage of 43 of our 67 counties. So the water that we send south, frankly, is very, very important. And that's kind of what anything that we looked at that we said is really going to affect the vast majority of the counties in Pennsylvania, then we ought to, it's worthwhile taking a look at, no matter what what generated the rationale. We've always looked at clean water and the upgrading of our streams and those that are impaired as that being beneficial for Pennsylvania. Pennsylvanians, we all benefit from having clean water and cleaning up our own water. My theory kind of in addressing the Chesapeake Bay is if we clean up our water here that benefits us, we do not then need to worry about what happens downstream. Now, that may be an overly simplistic view of it, but that's exactly what happens. 832, as I indicated earlier, was generated to address non-point source discharges. And I mean, kind of looking at them in the broad brush or the broadest scale, we would be talking about agricultural land, acid mine drainage, and developments. That's where, when I say non-point source discharges, the runoff from those properties is not contained in one pipe. It may be over, I mean, miles or along stream banks or hundreds of acres. So we talked about how can we address these? And we came up with the thinking that we needed to address water quality in Pennsylvania that addresses our water and our farms and our communities, and it really focuses on what we're doing here. So we took a look at what we could do, establish a clean water fund. Clean water fund basically is money. We need to invest money in the cleanup. And I've gone to the leadership and we have asked for funding out of the American Rescue Plan funds in the amount of $250 million. Of that money, we have some thoughts about how we would distribute it. And it would be distributed, it's a combination of existing plans as well as some new ideas. And I try and give you a little bit of a breakdown what we are thinking about as far as how we would distribute the money. We would probably try and take about 50% of it to put into an ag conservation assistance program. And that's a new program. I've sponsored a bill, I believe the bill number is Senate Bill 465, which would establish this program. Everything that we hear is that farmers need help, that they, to put in riparian buffers, to put in fences, to do all kinds of stream restoration projects that would really help cut down the pollution that comes off of their, not necessarily pollution, but the runoff, including nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, which comes off of their land. We think that that's a really important thing. And as I said, we think that that's so important that our thinking is to take about 50% of the money and put it towards that effort. The other thing we would also talk about is acid mine drainage, which I mentioned before. That's a recurring problem throughout Pennsylvania. It's one of the areas that really need to address. I have been involved in reclamation and acid mine drainage projects for many, many years, long before I came to the Senate as an attorney. I had clients that were involved in that type of programming, and it's very successful. But in a lot of cases, people just need additional funding and help to promote the program and to help accomplish what we need to do. We have also talked about putting part of the money in a municipal stormwater assistance program. Everybody, I mean, I think that that's common with most municipalities out there that talk about they need to deal with their stormwater. We understand that. And as I said at the beginning, that's one of the areas developing that where some of the runoff problems occur and some of the pollution comes from. And we're also talking about the clean water procurement program. That's an idea that we had, and I don't mean to be trite about this, but our thinking here is this kind of we would pay for results. That's a little bit different than the grant programs that many times we're all familiar with. The grant program idea is that you make a proposal and you tell me that for a certain amount of money, you're going to accomplish all these things. Well, that's fine. I'm not sure how well that works or how aggressive we are in following up to make sure that the money is spent, and we really don't do anything with it. So our clean water procurement program goes back to the old-fashioned American way. When you want a result, you pay for it. And the idea, the concept behind it would be to say in a certain area, we need to cut down the nitrogen by a certain percentage, and you put it out RFP bid, open it up to a private industry to come in to say for X amount of dollars per ton or whatever unit of measurement, we will reduce the nitrogen. And at the end, we sign a contract and say, if you do this, we will pay you. And that's the difference between the grant program. We pay for results. And interestingly, we had a bill, I think in the last session, where we suggested that we would like to start that program. We need to prime the pump, so to speak. We would like to start that program with $20 million. And we didn't get it through the legislature the last session. It kind of stalled. But the interesting part is Maryland picked our legislation, including the $20 million an initial funding amount, and actually passed it. And they have now put that program into operation in Maryland. And Maryland, of course, is part of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, along with Pennsylvania and Virginia. So we hold out hope for that program to be a viable one that we could go ahead and get it into motion here in Pennsylvania and see whether it works. I mean, if it doesn't work, well, then we can always try something else. But as I said, it's the American way. We pay for results. So Senate Bill at 832 is now on the calendar. When I went to the leadership and asked for or suggested the amount of $250 million, all I can say is that they didn't throw us out of the office. So I think that it has some possibilities. We know that we need to address the EPA requirements that have been set for the Pennsylvania to meet regarding the Chesapeake Bay, and those are as of 2025. We're looking at funding these programs and getting things started. I guess that's what we're trying to accomplish. There are studies out there. I think Penn State did a study a couple of years ago that said that Pennsylvania, if they're going to even try and meet the TMDL requirements and the nitrogen reduction, and that we need to meet these 2025 EPA requirements, we're going to have to invest about $324 million a year. We're not there at this point. So I think that asking and starting all these other programs and some of the new ones for what we've proposed is really something that we think it has some good features to it, that it will get people's attention. And I think also that we have finally the attention of the legislature that we really need to do something with water quality. I think that probably at the beginning of 2020, we were really poised to accomplish a lot of these things. Obviously, with the COVID hit, I think we had a major setback, but I think we're getting back on track. There's a lot of discussion about what's gone on. We have other things that are in the works regarding water quality and environmental issues, but I think that Senate Bill 832 is a funding stream which we really need to have so that we can start up some of these programs and get things underway. So with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions that people might have about what we intend to accomplish with 832, the amount of money, what the projections are. Any of those questions?
Sure, we actually did get one that came in through the chat. Someone had asked, would this be for the Bay watershed counties only, or would all watersheds be eligible?
No, it's all watersheds. I mean, we focus on, and that's why I said we don't want this to be a Chesapeake Bay bill because water quality affects all of Pennsylvania. It just so happens that the Susquehanna watershed, as I said, drains 43 of 67 counties. So, but we have those counties that their primary drains into the rivers around Pittsburgh. We have Lake Erie, and we have the Delaware River basin area. So it's across the state. It is just not the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay, thank you. So I actually have a question. I know you are not the main sponsor of the bill, but could you talk a little bit about Senate Bill 525 that would create the Growing Greener 3 program and funding?
Yeah, that's Senator Gordner's bill that he has introduced. That, I mean, we support that, but that's another, if my recollection is correct, that's another $500 million to fund that. So, you know, and we've also had some conversation as to whether or not we should combine some of these things into one ask. We have not gotten that far along yet with 525. I think, as I said, my bill 832 is on the calendar right now. So it's one of those things that we get the legislation moving. We can always talk about combining, putting the projects together and down the road, but we just need to get people's attention and get them moving.
Sure. Okay, we did get another question. Would individuals, organizations, research groups, or governmental groups be eligible to apply for these funds?
I think the answer, it depends on which funds are out there, but the answer is yes. One of the goals that we're trying to establish is to get private business and more involved in these things, and that's the clean water procurement. The idea behind that was to tap into the expertise of private industry. I am not a believer that, I mean, you know, government is not the last depository of knowledge. And actually, government's probably really behind where private businesses or private industry is on some of these issues. So we are, you know, all these things, we're encouraging help from the private industry side.
Okay, we did get another. Is there an investment strategy to keep the fund growing while providing money for projects, citing funds to projects?
That's a really good question. And there is a recognition, I think, that once we fund these programs, it is going to commit the state to a continuing funding requirement. But that's something that's been proposed now with respect to what we need to do with the Chesapeake Bay. That idea has been proposed for 10 years at least, that we at one point should have been spending, the numbers were something $370 million a year to fund these programs to meet the obligations that we've committed ourselves in the Chesapeake Bay Compact to meet. We haven't done that. We have managed to get credit for things that we have done here in Pennsylvania, and that's always a constant battle. There's a model, the Chesapeake Bay Commission, or Chesapeake Bay model, which you plug in all this information. I'm not an expert on it, but you plug in all this information, what we're doing in Lancaster County and all that, and you get credits for undertaking. Like we have a bill out there that we're trying to rewrite for the first time in 60 years, the fertilizer law in Pennsylvania. If we do that, we get certain credits in the Bay model as far as reducing nitrogen. And that's kind of the whole concept behind a lot of these things, is that we have done those things here in Pennsylvania, and that's why we've got credit. So maybe we've actually reduced the amount that we should be putting into programs. We think that we can accomplish an awful lot of where we need to go with the first $100 million out of the funds that we're asking for. If that works, I don't think there's any question about it. It is, and it's been recognized that this is probably going to require a long-term funding requirement.
All right, thank you for that. And then it looks like someone has a question in regards to clarity. This wouldn't be in the form of grants, but rather paying for private entities of some sort to front the cost to do the work, and the state pays for the results?
Well, it depends which program. I mean, some of it, the Ag Conservation Assistance Program, it would probably be grant funded, and some of the other ones that we've done with conservation districts are grant funded programs. The clean water procurement, the whole concept there is that that's going to be a bid contract basis. So it depends which program we're talking about.
Okay, we do have one more. Will there be a component for operation, maintenance, and repair of systems BMPs?
Probably the Ag Conservation Assistance Program. A lot of that is going to be based on BMPs, best management practices, and one of the things that we hear about all the time that farmers really need is technical assistance, and as to what are the best BMPs that are out there and everything. So, I can't say that a certain amount is going to go to that, but my guess is that the way that these grants could be worded, and that yes, there would be help with BMPs.
Okay, I think we got one more in. Let's see. Oh, nope. All right, I think that's the final question. I do have one final question myself, and you may have touched upon it before, but
Okay.
What are the chances you think Senate Bill 832 will pass, both the House and the Senate?
How's your crystal ball working today?
I mean, do you see have you heard anybody is opposed really or anything like that?
No, and I said this partially, I said without kidding about it. When I went and several of us went and met with leadership, and we proposed, here's what we want to do. We want to establish this clean water fund, split it between these various project or various programs. Some of them are in existence, like the Ag Conservation Assistance Program is a new one. Here's what we would like to do. And we mentioned the sum of $250 million. Nobody laughed at us. Nobody said, get out. I mean, I'm kidding, but and there was a recognition. Well, okay, if we do this, and one of my comments was, we need to start somewhere, and we need to get these programs moving. And nobody said that these are not good ideas or good programs or things that we have to meet. EPA, whether right now the Chesapeake Bay and EPA are major concerns for 43 of the 67 counties, every place I go. And that's if you look at Pennsylvania's map too, it's right up to the center of the state, and it is the least populated area of the state. Maybe that's why we have not gotten attention. I don't know. I mean, obviously, we have Pittsburgh and Philadelphia on the opposite side, outside of that. But we think that we just need to get these programs going. I have not gotten a lot of comment back that says you're crazy for even trying this or anything like that. So I have to think that there is a recognition that we need to address this. There's been more and more comments. I've been very encouraged by the comments I hear that, yes, we recognize we need to do this. And it's for our own good. It's like I said, if we clean up our water, we don't have to worry about what happens downstream. So I think I'm hopeful that, yes, that we can pass something. We may not get the amount that we asked for. We may need to take a look and scale back some of these ideas, but it's a starting place. And as I said, I think initially, it was like an effort we need to prime the pump and get it started and see whether some of these things work and what the results are.
All right, thank you. We actually did get another question that came in. It says the Bay model doesn't take into consideration the removal of AMD, iron, manganese, aluminum sulfates. With over 300 publicly funded treatment systems across Pennsylvania, do you think we are losing out on credits and sediment removal that is in the form of AMD sediments?
Not quite sure what we're talking about here. AMD is not necessarily sediment runoff. AMD is, probably a chemical problem in most cases. And it's a result of mining tunnels. I'm very, very familiar with one project, the reclamation of AMD area. And it was an area that was mined in probably the late 1800s, the early 1900s. And it was tunnel mined, but it was at a time when the way tunnel mining was done, it was done with mules and with people by hand that used to pick. Well, maybe they went down a couple hundred feet and then just left those areas. And in this particular area, what happened is those tunnels they filled up with water, and then as a result of the drainage out of those tunnels, it's the acidic nature of the water that was coming out. So what's happening in that area is they're now, with surface mining techniques, they can go down far below where those tunnels were, take out everything, and they're mining for coal, get the coal and backfill with material that will lower the pH level or stabilize the pH, so that it can counteract the acidic nature of the runoff. And it has been a tremendous project that I'm aware of. It has taken streams which were literally dead and are now considered to be cold water fisheries. So those types of things are that's what we want to address. Not necessarily, I'm not sure about the sedimentation, or if that was the comment about that goes through the sewage treatment plants.
All right, I don't see any further questions that came in. So first, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I know you're busy now that the legislature is in session and everything. So, and hopefully we'll be able to get the Senate Bill 832 as well as Senate Bill 525 to Governor Wolf's desk. So fingers crossed, it could be really helpful for this community here. So
yeah, that I think it will be. And I'm particularly, I know that one of the other things about the interesting thing about acid mine drainage, I know that was even one of the considerations. President Biden mentioned that as part of his environmental goal. I don't know, I don't remember it, 6 months ago at least, and I think it's part of some of the programs that are under consideration now. You hear about acid mine drainage, so it is an issue, and if we can combine some of these various sources with what we're doing, we may be able to make a significant dent in the problems that we have here in Pennsylvania.
right, agreed. Well, thank you again. And for our attendees, just want to remind you guys to check out the sponsor and exhibitor page. And we have a break coming up, and the next presentations will begin at 10:30. So again, thank you all, and Senator Ria, really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Nice to do it.
Take care.